This show is about your mental health. While it's supported by the pillars of positivity and hope, if you find yourself in crisis, please reach out for help. In many communities in both the United States and Canada, you can dial 211 to be connected to mental health and crisis services in your region. While it may seem like it at times, you are not alone. If day after day, week after week, year after year, 80% of your diet was fast food, what would that do to your physical health? Now, if 80% of what you think during a day after day, week after week, year after year is negative, what would that do to your mental health? Or should I say, what is it doing to your mental health? My guest blew my mind a few years ago with a word that changes all of this, a 4-letter word that can change your life, and that's guaranteed right now on The Happy Molecule. Our December of putting some of the merry back into Christmas continues here on The Happy Molecule. Hello to all of my new listeners. Welcome back to the rest of you. What are you thinking about right now, this second? I bet it's a worry or something else negative. I have the science to back up that guess. The National Science Foundation figures the average person has anywhere between 12 to 60,000 thoughts a day. Out of those, 80% are negative thoughts. In other words, anxious, worrisome, stressful thoughts. A Cornell University study, meantime, concludes that 85% of what we worry about never happens. And this is where this is so much more powerful than you might think, and it explains why depression and anxiety are at pandemic proportions. Our thoughts are really electrical impulses in our brain, energy. Remember the first law of thermodynamics? Anyone? Bueller? That's right. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, only altered or transformed. We choose to alter most of our energy, most of our thoughts towards the negative, day after day, week after week, year after year. You notice I use the word we choose. We choose to power our life with negative energy, negative thoughts. Why? Well, one researcher, actually it's Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh, says, "I never get my hopes up, so I won't get let down." We prepare for a fall that rarely happens. My question now for you is, would you like to reverse this energy flow? My guest is Asante Haughton. The Canadian Mental Health Association considers him one of the most influential speakers in this country when it comes to good mental health. Hello, my friend. How are you?
I am doing well. How about you? It's been a while.
It has been. You know, there was one time you and I were talking, and you said a 4-letter word, and it blew my mind. And it was a word I had been looking for years, and it was so simple. And it's something that you talk about so much. What is that 4-letter word, Asante?
Well, it's not the word that people say sometimes when. So the 4-letter word the other 4-letter word I like to say is hope. That's a huge part of my life and just everything. Without hope, I probably wouldn't even be here speaking to you. So
I want people to really stop and think about that word. You know, we usually just see it on Christmas cards or something like that. And it sometimes gets thrown around. But it's a powerful, powerful word.
yeah, I think people say the word hope all the time, but I wonder if people really sit down to figure out what it means for them.
I think you're right. I think you're right. What does hope mean to you?
For me, hope, what it means for me is trusting that no matter how bad things are today or how bad they might get, that there is a chance and an opportunity for things to be better and to be the way that I would like for them to be.
Now, while the word is simple, the concept is simple, convincing yourself there is hope can sometimes be really difficult.
Yeah, I mean, it's really really hard. So I
Yeah.
mean, I mean, it's easier for me these days because I've had the opportunity to go through some really hard times, but then to go through some really good times. But for those who maybe haven't seen that transition happen in their lives, I can imagine how difficult finding hope would be for them.
Let's go back a bit and just bring people up to date on your early life. When you were a kid, you went through hell.
Yeah, you could say that.
Yeah.
Definitely, it was really hard for me growing up. One of my earliest memories in life was the day that my mom woke up myself and my brothers and took us to a women's shelter. And I was 4 years old at the time. So that was kind of like the start of a journey of just a series of unfortunate events.
And that was to get away from your dad
Yeah, yeah.
at the
So,
time.
and it's really weird because when you're a kid, you're like, I love this person, my father,
Yeah.
but also like, that there's something wrong there.
It drove your mother into an incredible state of depression as well. So much so, tell me about that day there was a knock on the door.
Yeah. So I was 14 years old, or 14 or 15. I don't know. It was a summer after grade nine. And my brothers and I, we're huge sports fans. I mean, like my wife gets a little upset with the amount of sports I watch, but
That's just because you cheer for Toronto.
right,
If you'd stop doing that, you'd be fine.
right. So that's what it is. But anyway, so we're watching some soccer, some EuroLeague soccer, and we get this knock on the door, right? And my mom's home. She's upstairs. She's in her bedroom, and she's kind of a loner anyway. Like that's her personality. So we're kind of like, she's just chilling. She wants to get away from us who are making all this noise. Three boys just, being a little wild. So we get the knock on the door, and I go to answer it, and there are these two men in these like uniforms. I'd never seen a uniform like that before, and they said they were from the a crisis service or something like that, and they were here for a woman named Jasmine, and that's my mom's name. And
Yeah.
but me being a kid, I'm like not even taking this in. I'm really thinking about it's the end of the first half in this intense game. And I want to go back, So that's where my head is at. So I'm like, all right, let me let these guys in and bring these guys upstairs and, check it out and see what's happening. It's not even registering to me that anything could be wrong. Like in my head, I'm like, they probably got it wrong. It's the wrong house. We lived in a big housing complex. Jasmine's a pretty common name. Whatever, right? So open the door and, we find my mom in her bedroom on the floor and she's crying and, she's got just pills like scattered around her and she's like on the ground, like fetal position, like crying, like ugly cry,
Yeah.
really bad. And I've never seen that before from my mom. So it was really shocking.
It has to be for a 14-year-old. It has to be to see someone who cares for you and you care for her, obviously, in that kind of condition. What happened?
It was hard. I mean, it doesn't quite register in the moment what's happening. It's all a blur. I I I didn't like cry out or do anything. I just kind of stood there stunned. And the two crisis workers went into the room and spoke to my mom for a bit and had her, sit down on the bed and got her some water and started doing some de-escalation. And then the next thing you know, she was in the ambulance, and it was just really wild because I was like the first responder in my home. Then my brothers came upstairs once I guess they figured out what was going on, and my oldest brother, he's got a lot of years on me. He has 8 years on me, so and being the oldest, he kind of took over the situation, And my middle brother, who's got 7 years on me, for me, probably one of the hardest parts was seeing his reaction, because him and I were like best friends, and I always really looked up to him as like this tough guy, because that's kind of who he was. He was the one in our family. If anybody was gonna become a pro athlete, it was this guy, and he just had that like machismo factor, and that that thing that made you feel like this guy's gonna protect you, kind of thing. But he was the one who just completely broke down. Just
Yeah.
he locked himself in the bathroom and was just like sobbing for like half an hour.
How's your mom doing now?
Oh, she's doing great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she's gotten the help and working on that, and she has hope.
Oh, I mean, she many times when I'm in need of hope, that's the person I go to these days.
So the secret is then, how do we give ourselves hope? How do we see someone we love on the floor like that with pills scattered around, and that makes such an impression upon us? How does a 14-year-old go from that to trying to, first of all, know that they need hope, but trying to find that hope? And I mean, it's a tough question.
At that time, I was just like, what's going on with my mom, and is she going to get better? And, she didn't, not quickly anyways, at that time. It was probably about a 4 or 5 year journey before she really started to turn the corner in a very meaningful way. So, I mean, it was hard. What would have been really helpful, because, we went to the hospital that day. And, my mom got the assessment by the psychiatrist, and then they kind of just released her and gave her a prescription, and that was it. They didn't really say much to the family at all. And so that doesn't really, if you're looking for hope in that situation and you're young and you don't really know anything about the world yet, you don't know anything about mental illness or mental health, like to have a doctor pull you aside and say, hey, here's the situation, and here's the prognosis, and here's what the path might look like, and here's what the support might look like, then being me or my brothers, we'd probably feel more like, okay, we have a roadmap for what the next little while might look like as we work together to help my mom get healthy. But instead, it was we didn't get any of that, so we were just kind of left to figure it out on our own.
Where did you eventually find hope the first time? I mean, the first time that really registered that this is something important.
Probably the first time. Well, I mean, I think for me, hope came in stages. The very first thing, and I actually don't talk about this that much in any of my presentations or anything like that, but the very first thing was I read a book called I think it was called Antoine Fisher or Finding Fish. It was the autobiography of a man, African American, named Antoine Fisher, and it was actually my grade 12 English teacher who referred me to it. And around that same time, the movie depicting the story had come out, starring Denzel Washington. I didn't actually see the movie. To this day, I still haven't seen the movie. But I'm not a big fan of seeing the biopic of the autobiography. I don't know.
Yeah, you're always disappointed. Don't do it.
Right? So I avoided that. But I read the book, and like within the first chapter of the book, he starts talking about the abuse that he faced from his aunt. For me to see this story of, a young black male who was dealing with things like much worse than what I felt I was dealing with. At least nobody was abusing me. I've dealt with a lot in my life, but, none of my parents ever really hit me or anything like that, or I haven't gone through any kind of sexual abuse, growing up. So,
well, he was actually born in a prison.
Oh, I'd see. I forgot that detail, but you're absolutely right now that you brought it up. So, I mean, that
So
like his level of trauma was like up here,
yeah.
right? And as I'm going through the story, I'm picking up these little nuggets. I'm like, yeah, he had all this going on at home, and he didn't feel like he fit in with his friends, but he found a way to find people. He became a DJ in his school and was like DJing the dances and stuff like that. Um, so it's like he was finding these little means of connection. And at that time, I was really struggling socially because I didn't really know what to do with my situation. I didn't want to let anybody close to me. I didn't want anyone to know that, in my mind, my family was just messed up. So, and my mom was messed up. So, I was like internalizing all this stigma and feeling really bad about what was going on. I felt like it made us worse people, and I felt really ashamed. So, I didn't feel like letting anybody get close to me.
Now, what did the book? What in his story in particular stayed with you?
Well, he went to the army, or the military, and
The Navy, yeah,
the,
he
the
went into the
Navy.
Navy, yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and then um he I'm not sure what they call. I'm not like a military. He did his tour of duty or whatever.
yeah,
And
yeah.
anyways, and he came back to the States, and he met this woman, and they got married, and then his life just became pretty normal after that. For me, it was like this dude for the first 18 years of his life, it was just horrible, just like abuse after abuse after abuse, tragedy after tragedy. And yet, despite that, by the time he, got to his mid 20s, late 20s, his life looked relatively normal and like the kind of life I wanted.
It's interesting when you look at other people, right? Let's talk about looking at kids, because you had one of your best friends' mom had a daycare, and that was another turning point in your life.
Yeah, huge. You know, it's funny how sometimes you get involved in things and you don't know what the impact of those things, what the impact is going to be until later. So I've always just liked hanging around kids. I don't know why. Uh, I find kids to be very just honest and truthful, and they show you who they are.
And fun, and they always seem positive.
Right? So
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes I can't deal with adults nonsense. But anyway, so I'm probably around age 21, 22 at this time, and my best friend, his mom ran this daycare out of her apartment, and I was always hanging out with him, which means I was always hanging out with the kids. We would go pick up the kids, at 4 o'clock from school, and we bring them home, and then we'd help his mom take care of them for the next few hours until their parents picked them up. And we're doing this all the time, and just at first it was just kind of a thing it was fun. I liked it, and I slowly started going down the hill, and my mental health was just getting worse and worse and worse, and I became very suicidal. And it was very dissociative. It didn't feel like I was walking in my own body for quite some time.
Yeah.
And the thing that helped me snap back was being with those kids. And there was a day in the middle of the summer where I was at my friend's place, and the kids were running around and playing, and I was sitting on the couch, and there was just a lot going on. It was like one of those movie scenes where there's like a lot going on, and there's this person just very pensive, and they're not really responding to their environment. But I was really just focused on these kids and said to myself, damn, like, look how happy they are just to be alive. Like, nothing's making them happy. They're just like finding reasons in their environment to find joy. Like, it's just emerging. And it made me realize how long it had been since I felt that joy. And it made me realize like who I was in that moment, and how much the person in that moment was not connecting to the true essence of myself, which was like, I'm like a pretty silly person. I'm not, despite how I might come across sometimes when I talk about serious things, I'm like not a serious person at all. Sometimes, like, my family, they get upset with me because I don't know when to turn it off. but but
Yeah, but I mean, and you're also one of these guys. I mean, you have a perma smile. Like honestly, I don't think I think if you got mad, I think I would laugh at you because I think that you have that always smiling. And that's what a lot of people say, right? Is that they can't see you with depression because, well, you're smiling all the time. So, what I find interesting too about the story with the kids is that you basically, and you almost said it there too just now, you were basically looking at yourself at one time. At one time in your life, you were happy, you were running around, you had hope.
Yeah, it was definitely like looking at like younger versions of myself, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I loved that person. you know?
It reminds me of the Twilight Zone episode of called Kick the Can. It was a senior's home,
Okay.
and they had found a way to go back out and play Kick the Can, and they turned into kids again when they started playing the game. And they wanted to go back to a time when there was hope and there was happiness and that. Did you, okay, so that happened. It made an impression on you. Do you think you've come back now to that time of joy and happiness?
I would say, yeah, definitely. And that's not to say that, life doesn't have its hardships, because it does. 2020 has been a very successful year for me, but it's also been a really hard year.
Yeah, no kidding.
Like,
It's been a terrible year for most people.
right? So it's been a really tough year, but even when things have been hard this year, I still managed to be able to keep my head up and keep my chin up and still feel like, as long as I'm healthy, I have an opportunity to, just have happiness in my life. And, this is a guy who had, I had surgery on my Achilles in December of 2019. So I wasn't able to really walk for the first 2 months of 2020. And then I started walking, and then, COVID happened, and then I got COVID, and I was sick.
Oh, did you?
Yeah. And I was sick for a while. Like I know they say, like, most people recover, especially younger people recover in like most people recover in like 5 to 10 days. I was out for it was 22 days before I started feeling better again. And then even after like feeling better doesn't mean there's like these lingering things that actually I still have some lingering symptoms, like these weird like electrical, like almost like muscle spasms kind of things that happen from time to time, and I still get dizzy from time to time, but other than that, I'm like 100%.
A significant number of people who have had COVID actually have reported instances of depression and anxiety as well. What did it do to your depression?
Oh boy. When I was actively sick, I was just mostly worried about like, man, it just feels terrible. I just don't want to feel this way anymore. But it was after I started recovering that's where in particular the anxiety really started it was really bad for quite some time. Of course there's, you're worried about your recovery and if you're going to be okay, but there was a point where it felt like there is nothing in my external world that would cause me to have any anxiety, yet it was still there. And looking back on it now, I'm quite certain that that was a symptom. And I there was a night where I was having some like mild hallucinations and things of that nature. So it was a strange experience for sure.
Yeah. Okay, you know what? I think the question on everyone's mind is, yes, this is great, but how do I find hope? How do I plant that seed? How do I harvest it? and allow it to grow and allow it to always be forefront, because it's very easy to slide backwards when you have depression. So for that, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go right to the Me 3 list.
Okay, let's rock. Let's rock and roll.
Here we go. So these are 3 things that you can do that are simple, easy peasy. It's beginning steps. It's the first step on that journey. So number 1, what is it?
So I had to pull out my notes. So the first thing
I told you to memorize these, Asante.
So the first thing for me is to focus on change, positive change that has already happened.
Okay.
I think we all have, something in our lives where we could say it was not where we wanted it to be some time ago, and now it's closer to where we want it to be today. So for me, it's about, just focusing on those things and saying, even if 19 out of 20 things in your life are not going well, that one thing where there was positive change, well, there was positive change. So if it could happen there, maybe it can happen elsewhere.
It's funny, though, because in a lot of cases, it's the other way around. We can have 19 wonderful things happen to us and one bad thing, and we always focus on that one bad thing. So it's searching for something that has been changed, especially if you affected that change, and then really focus on that. That is, yeah, definitely, because we need to know that there are some good things in our life as well.
100%. That's exactly it. And I mean, I know they always talk about gratitude, and it seems like I think the concept is so simple that people are like, oh, gratitude, come on, like, it's whatever. But when you actually do it, it has an effect.
Yeah, you know what, folks? Yeah, it is. And you talk about gratitude and that, you don't have to tell anybody you're doing it. So if you do feel a little bit silly writing it down or saying, you know what, I'm really thankful for the warm breeze today, or I'm really thankful, you know what, just don't tell anybody, but tell yourself if you have to. But it's better if you tell someone, actually. And if they think you're weird, so be it.
Yeah.
I'm weird and I'm proud of it, my friend.
That I don't care if people think I'm corny, weird, whatever. All I know is that I'm living my life and I'm enjoying it. And each year that goes by, here's the thing is, each year I reflect on like the wins and the challenges, and each year, even since I've been in my recovery and been doing a lot better, every single year there has been like a life-changing event happen to me that was like hard, but it's this gratitude practice and the other 2 things I'm going to mention, but that have really helped me to not return to that place of hopelessness. And because there was a time in my life where hope was very hard to find, right? But now it's like when bad things happen, because I'm able to also see that good things have happened, it gives me hope that I can turn it around.
Yeah. Okay, number 2.
Number 2. Find stories of people like you or people in similar situations to you who have achieved what they wanted in life.
So this goes back to Antoine Fisher.
That's exactly it, right? So,
yeah.
I mean, for him, it was like he was young, he's Black, he grew up poor, and he dealt with a lot of trauma, and he wanted to, essentially grow up and have a partner and just live a semi-normal life. And that's what I wanted. And so for me, that book was a complete game changer for me. Like, it literally was like the difference between me not ever having hope and just a little inkling of that hope coming in. Because of course, just in the back of my head, there's that voice like, well, that's some other dude in the States and that's not you. But part of me was also like, but it could be me.
Now, a really great place to find these is a place you can find Asante, and that's a TED Talk.
Yeah.
That is, you know what? You go in, you search, you just say inspirational. That's it. And you'll get a million hits. And listen to some of these stories. And they're not phony. This can happen. This is real. Most definitely. I like that. Finally, number 3.
Number 3, focusing or really looking at our the world around us, and identifying who are the people in our world that care about us, and bringing those people to the forefront, right? And that might be hard for some folks to find that person who cares, because unfortunately there are people in the world who are lonely and who are isolated and things of that nature. So for me, when I was in high school, before this was even really a thing, now I mean everyone's on social media, but when I was in high school, I used to go on like internet forums where people were into hip hop, because that's what I was really into. And so if I didn't have a lot of like close people in my like real world, like I had these folks who would like actually check up on me from time to time, be like, hey, like how you doing, that kind of thing.
And you may not have realized it at the time that they cared about you, and that was important. But it just, but looking back, I think this is an absolutely fantastic one.
Yeah, and it was funny. Like, I mean, I was on the internet a lot, but a lot of times I was just playing video games, right? But when I was like at that rock bottom place, I'm like, let me log on to the hip hop message board, and then go on. What was the chat back then? I think it was AOL. This is way back in the day. And like just like holler at these guys, talk to these guys, and see what's going on. And just it seems like such a just a weird and corny thing, but for me that was kind of that was my air when I was like 15 years old.
Yeah, I mean, social media does get a bad rap, unfortunately, but I always try and look at the positive side of it. It does keep us connected if we use it effectively. Using it for gossip, and conspiracy theories, that's where it falls apart.
Right.
But reaching out to someone who you normally wouldn't have, or they reach out to you. Hey, Asante Haughton, I went to high school with him. You know what? Hey, Asante, it's Joey here, or whatever. So we are reaching out to people. I mean, thank God for it, in Zoom meetings, things like that during COVID. I want to ask you something about that one. So you're saying look around to the people who love you, to the people who care about you. You had had suicidal thoughts. Did you ever attempt to take your life?
Depends on what you mean by attempt, right? It's not like I ever took a bunch of pills or, stepped in front of a vehicle or anything like that. But, I think sometimes people, it's not an active attempt, but they put themselves in situations where anything could happen, right?
Risky. Yeah, taking risks.
Right? So, I mean, there are times where I certainly, drank too much in unfamiliar situations and, or maybe talk trash to the wrong guy on the street, just trying to like start nonsense with people, things like that, times where, I dabbled in, we could say some street activities and things like that. And it was just because I didn't really have any hope for myself or my life. So I was like, whatever happens to me, who cares?
Well, I mean, there's the answer to why we take part in these street activities, why we drink to excess, why we're looking for happiness and hope. That's what those are to us. We look at them and we think this is it. It's going to give me happiness. It's going to give me hope. It does not, as we know. But at these times, were you thinking about the people who cared about you? In fact, I want you to rhyme off a few people right there and then. Let's start with your mom, your brother, et cetera, who cared about you at that time. Who were some of the people that cared about you?
I had a lot of people who cared about me. I just didn't see it.
Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, obviously there was my mom and my 2 older brothers. I got a tremendous amount of support from like many of my teachers in school. I had some guys in the neighborhood I played basketball with who, just come by and knock on my door and we hang out. So it wasn't like I was devoid of people, but sometimes, I'm learning about something recently called love languages, right? And and I think that the ways in which people were trying to reach me were not the ways in which uh I was allowing or that I needed to be reached, right? Um so the challenge there is just that, like, if you and I think that's why the third point, of the me three, is so important for me, because it has to be intentional, because right because
Just like looking for things to be thankful for, to be grateful for, it has to be intentional. I hear you.
yeah, you got to sit down and be like, who treats me well?
Yeah.
And sometimes it could be the person who runs the convenience store,
Yeah.
right? If sometimes, that person, you go in and you joke around, and instead of, just buying your bag of chips or whatever, you're there for 5-10 minutes, and you're hanging out for a bit. That person cares about you. They know your name. They ask you how you're doing.
You work a lot with youth now. You have helped with institute a program called Finding My Path. What is that?
Yeah, so finding my path, that's you know, it's funny. It's an employment program, but really what it is it's working in mental health. A lot of young people, especially, well, just let me take that back. A lot of people who have mental health challenges, oftentimes employment and steady employment becomes a challenge, right? And sometimes, people feel like the fix is just getting the person the job, or helping them with the interview, or helping them with, I don't know, all those tangible aspects, right? For me, my entire approach to the programming was always, what, from an emotional or psychological standpoint, is getting in the way. And if we, address those things, then, the paths open up for people.
And then when you have a job or the prospect of a job, you have hope. And
Yeah.
it comes right back to you, right? And you talk a lot about what we need to do more of as a society, as a community.
Yeah. I mean, I think in general, we got to love each other. I mean, again, sounds like flowery language and whatever,
Yeah.
but I mean, it comes down to that. And, we got to love ourselves and love each other, and I think it really does. The thing is, there might be someone who doesn't love themselves. And if I show them love, it might be the thing that helps them to see there's something lovable about them. So maybe they start loving themselves. And I mean, there's a little danger within that. Sometimes people get in these, like, trauma bond relationships. So that's not what I'm advocating for, but just that healthy expression of love and care sometimes goes really far for people. A lot of my approach to my work is, obviously, there's a lot of theory, and my education informs my work, but a lot of it is just like, I'm going to try to treat everybody in a way where, sorry, I got some background noise here.
That's quite all right.
For me, it's, I'm going to try to treat everybody the way that, as if they are a valuable person to me. I mean, am I always successful at that? No, but I really try to treat everybody as if they have a high level of value, just because, not because they did anything, or they're attractive, or whatever, like, who their favorite sports team is, like, none of the, like, just you, the person.
It is treating others the way you would like to be treated.
Yeah, and it's such a simple concept. They teach us this stuff when we're kids,
Yeah.
but I mean, we got to practice it. A friend of mine recently, you know, helped me out, and it was like, love is not just, love is more than an emotion. Love is a practice. So you have to practice love. You have to give it.
You're a poet. Have you got a good one for me about hope?
Oh, boy.
And I know I didn't prep you for
Oh,
this. I'm sorry,
no,
but you know
it's all
what?
good.
I want one that's in your mind and that sort of stands out in the forefront.
Okay, I got one for you. Let me see if I can remember it.
Okay,
Um,
go ahead.
it goes like this: Dreams are wasted through confusion. Empty lives are filled with nothing but hope for life's conclusion. But the strength of spirit and unwavering faith of humans provides obtrusion for suicidal delusion. Instead, perseverance is determined to find a solution. Hit with the realization that reclusion was not the solution for my suicidal delusion, as it only impeded my progress in social institutions. I sifted through the mental pollution to find the remedy for my soul's contusion. Through laughter and amusement, I was finally able to enjoy life's music. Once taken for granted, now I try to use it, but sometimes fall back into the pit where I foolishly abuse it. Now I've been beaten down by life, but I've lived through the bruises, only to realize that whether Christian, Islamic, or Jewish, Hindu, Sikh, or Buddhist, that you need to open your ears in order to hear life's music.
That's powerful. I like that. I like that. Are you and you're hearing life's music now?
All the time.
Yeah.
I got life's music around me right now. I hear my wife laughing in the background. That's life's music right now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. It is, you are one of the people in my life who I appreciate and who taught me something important about depression, about that's depression's kryptonite right there is hope. We can kill depression off if we can just shine hope on it and do whatever you can to find that hope and reach out and talk to people and try really hard to listen for life's music.
That's it. You're gonna make me choke up though, man. That's a huge compliment. As no, because I mean, what's interesting is like, I mean, I know that we're friends now. We talk or whatever, right? But I just remember just watching you on TV, like when I was younger. I was like, oh, this guy is hilarious. You always had a quip. You always had something, but you also knew how to balance that with like genuine emotion, which you didn't really see from a lot of guys on TV, right? So, and then when you started talking about your mental health stuff, I mean, it was like, this is my dude. So I mean, it goes both ways, man.
That's very kind of you. That's very kind of you. I'm going to give you the last word. My guess is there. I mean, even if it's just one person out there who's struggling to find that hope, I want you to talk to them. What would you say to them?
Well, I would say to someone out there who's really struggling to find hope is try to find someone else who at one point has struggled to find hope and talk to them about their process. And then take what you've learned from them and apply it yourself. I'm a big believer in just doing what works. And a lot of my approach to life is just looking at other people who are good at things, learning what their approach and mindset is, and then just doing that and seeing what happens.
Asante, thank you for this.
Yeah, no, it's such a pleasure, man. It's the best time of it's been a hard week. It's been a long week, and I'm so happy that this is how I'm ending my week.
I'm thrilled. Let's give each other hope, shall we?
Yeah, for real, man. Always.
Hope. HOPE. Write it down. Say it in the mirror to yourself over and over. I'm going to be honest, this is not going to change your life overnight. It's going to take practice and repetition. But you can start right now, this very second. Just put the word hope into your thoughts and then do it again and again. Remember, you are not creating good thoughts or good energy because of the pesky first law of thermodynamics. You are altering your thoughts, altering your energy, and in turn altering the direction that it will take you. So hope and keep hoping, because the percentages are heavily weighted in your favor. And I have to tell Christopher Robin to pass this on to ER. Thanks so much for taking this time out with me. Take care of yourself and take care of each other.
Please consider subscribing to this podcast and also check out the Happy Molecule Extra at thehappymolecule.com. There you'll find a link to a video version of this episode, be able to join the conversation about mental health, learn about our Facebook Live show, and get a preview of upcoming episodes. You can email us at thehappymolecule@gmail.com. I'm Erin Davis, wishing you good mental health.